Yes, good morning, and welcome to Tuesday in this our season of Pentecost. As we reflect this morning, I invite us to hold space for the Eternal One. Be very conscious this morning of God's presence, knowing that God is here. We need to prepare a place for God, to set out an area where we can identify as being our sacred space for these moments as we seek to engage the presence of the divine, to allow God to be present to us in a very real way. At this early hour of the morning, we need to be really mindful of all that God is doing in our lives. I really want us to take a few moments this morning and really allow ourselves to come to an awareness of this divine presence. I would like us to be intentional, to really give some awareness to this idea that there is something greater than ourselves, so much greater. Yet that presence is so very mindful and caring when it comes to our journey, our existence. There is a relationship, there's a sensitivity. We're not made by some watchmaker who winds us up and leaves us to work. We are the creation of love itself. And love is within us, seeking always to manifest. Yet so oftentimes, because of life circumstances, we prevent this love from manifesting. So in our meditation this morning, I want us to focus on this love that we have, this love that we are. Recognizing that so much of our time is spent in our cognition, in our intellectualizing, in our mind thinking, that we are constantly bombarded by thoughts of yesterday, thoughts of tomorrow, millions of what ifs, and sometimes even more of shouldn't have. And that so preoccupies us that our hearts cannot find space for us to simply be, existing in the moment, receiving guidance for the moment, exploring the fullness of the moment. The I am. So much of our existence is a non-point, in the sense that it is not about the present moment. It is not about the now. We respond to each other based on yesterday. Or based on our desire for tomorrow. And in so doing, we miss the divine presence. And even though we cognitively understand this, even though we feel its truth deeply, we are so locked into yesterday and tomorrow that we are petrified to simply be. And we justify this by bringing examples that would indicate that we have to be in tomorrow or in yesterday. And we satisfy ourselves that that is okay. That is what we have to do and to be. And then we call on God to help us deal with yesterday and tomorrow. And all God knows is now. 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 Nothing else exists. New every morning is the love. Awaken and uprising proves. Through sleep and darkness, we were safely brought. This newness, this ever-present newness of each morning, of each day, of each moment. So we breathe into this space, into this moment, into this knowing, and we rest there. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through it. A man was there named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd he could not, because he was short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to see him, because he was going to pass that way. When Jesus came to the place, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today." So he hurried down and was happy to welcome him. All who saw it began to grumble and said, "He is gone to be the guest of one who is a sinner." Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Look, half of my possessions, Lord, I will give to the poor. And if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will pay back 4 times as much." And Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost." In reading the scriptures, we sometimes have to wonder if this is who we as a human community really are. There's always this interference, always this judgment about this person or another. In this story, the judgment has to do with the rich, wealthy tax collector, the one who no doubt was able to become wealthy based on his shady dealings, his unjust methods. And yes, he was one who had done wrong. So Jesus decides he's going to be with him. And those watching are, in a sense, envious, jealous. They do not see the potential benefit of this visit of Jesus. They only see that which they have known, their yesterday. They know of the man as a crook in our terminology. That's how they see him. That's how he will always be to them. Jesus sees the son of Abraham. Jesus sees a child of God. How difficult it is for us to see a child of God. We see each other's faults. We see the things that others have done. And we relive the same moment that these things were done. Oftentimes regrettably for the rest of our lives. And so we are hardly ever present because we're living in that past moment. And we believe for some reason that by living there, we actually are able to justify everything that we do, every attitude we adopt, every response that we make to everyone else who we will encounter. The spiritual path is a really challenging path, but it is not impossible. It is challenging because it requires us to let go constantly. And that sense of letting go is wrapped into the word forgive. Jesus, in the Passion narrative, hangs on the cross. And one of the gospel writers records that he says, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." We utter these words at our Good Friday devotions. But in reality, we really need to utter these words daily as we engage others and as others, out of their own blindness, out of their own pain and suffering that they refuse to let go, offend us, injure us, speak ill of us, but the example of Jesus shows that we must not bear a new burden because of their own ignorance. Scripture reminds us to bear one another's burdens. Yes, we are to work with each other for the salvation of all. And as we do this, it doesn't mean, however, that in our response to others, that we take on their burden in such a way that we now perceive them as evil. And because we perceive them as evil, we go away injured for the rest of our existence. To bear another's burden is to help relieve the other of the burden. And so, what I'm saying here this morning is that our call really is to forgive. Our magic wand is to forgive. Our tool, our secret weapon, whatever we may choose to call it, is forgiveness. But the thing is that we fool ourselves into thinking that that is the last thing we should do. It is a foolish thing to do. It is better for us to just hate this person. It is perfectly reasonable for us to hold this grudge in our hearts because that person was horrible. And we are justified to continue this non-existence, because it can't be existence if we are not ourselves. So we're justified to continue this non-existence or this false existence, not being our real selves, simply because of what has taken place. Zacchaeus is given an opportunity to welcome the Christ, to receive the Christ. In the moment of receiving the Christ, Zacchaeus is transformed. And Zacchaeus himself steps out of his way of being. Because Zacchaeus too knew himself as the one who did horrible things. Zacchaeus knew himself as the one who gained wealth from unjust methodologies. Zacchaeus knew himself in that way. But Zacchaeus, in experiencing the presence of the Christ, steps out of his yesterday, steps out of his schemes for tomorrow, and becomes present to his today. In becoming present to his today, there's no way that he could continue to be as he was yesterday. And that's the power of the presence of the Christ in our lives. We cannot hold on to yesterday. We can only be here. And so we must know this for ourselves, and we must know this for others. In the presence of the Christ, we can only be here today. And in being here today, it means that we let go of all the burden that we have been carrying, and we simply be present to what is before us, to what is ours.